I stared at the blinking light like it owed me something. The landline hadn't rung since we stopped paying for voicemail service 2 summers ago. I only kept it because Helen used to insist it felt solid. She liked things that clicked into place. Light switches that gave a satisfying snap. Seat belts you could tug on twice to test. Receipts folded right down the middle. After she passed, I couldn't bring myself to remove it. Or the kitchen calendar from 2023. Or the chipped mug that said, "World's Okayest Wife." The one we got as a joke, but she used every morning like it was sacred. I pressed the button. The robotic voice said, "You have one new message, received yesterday at 11:47 p.m." 11:47. That was after I'd gone to bed. I remembered that because I had poured myself a second glass of red, sat in the recliner, and fallen asleep halfway through a rerun of Frasier. The message crackled. Then a woman's voice, warm and low. "Hey, it's me." It was Helen. I nearly dropped the phone. For a few seconds, I stood there frozen with the receiver pressed to my ear, like my joints forgot how to function. Her voice came through small and distant, not quite echoing, but like she was calling from underwater. "God, I hope this thing still works," she laughed gently. "Anyway, I know it's dumb, but I was just thinking about you, about everything, about how I'd tell you if I ever, well." My heart hammered in my chest. She sounded tired, but not sick. This wasn't from the last stretch in hospice. This was before all that. I could hear the life in her voice, the calm cadence she used when leaving notes on the fridge. Then static swallowed her words for a beat. I tapped the receiver. "Come on," I whispered. "So yeah, you probably won't hear this. I might delete it before you get home, but I just needed to say it once, out loud, even if I never send it. I love you." Click. That was it. I stood there long after the dial tone returned. It felt like the house had shifted, like the air had gotten heavier without me noticing. The voicemail had no date stamp in the saved log, just new message, not even a number. But it said yesterday, which wasn't possible. Helen had died 26 months ago, February 21st. I remember the date because I still couldn't look at the number 221 without my stomach tightening. I went to the kitchen table and sat down. I didn't turn on the light, just stared at the wall and tried to make sense of what I'd heard. Maybe it was an old recording stuck in some system glitch. Maybe someone reactivated the line. Maybe grief had finally broken me in a way no one warned me about. Or maybe, no, I wasn't ready to think that thought yet. The next morning, I called the phone company. They routed me through 5 menus and 2 reps before a guy named Carlos said, "Sir, we haven't serviced your voicemail box in, let me see, since August 2023. "I got a new message last night," I said, "from my late wife." There was a pause. Carlos cleared his throat. "Sir, are you certain the message was from yesterday? It said 11:47 p.m., and I was home, alone." More silence. "We've had zero access activity on your line in over a year," he said. "There's no server-side logging. In fact, the voicemail box is technically inactive. There's no recording system attached to your number." I thanked him and hung up. And that's when I did something I hadn't done in a year. I opened Helen's keepsake box. It was a lacquered wooden chest she'd inherited from her mother. Inside were letters, postcards, dried rose petals wrapped in wax paper, and old thumb drives, the kind with keychain loops and pastel caps that always fell off. I found one labeled Voices, plugged it into my laptop. 6 folders. Inside them, dozens of short MP3 files, all labeled by date. 2014 to 2020. Helen had a habit of recording things, her dreams, her thoughts on long walks, random poems she'd never show anyone. She never told me where she stored them. I used to joke that she narrated her life like a podcast no one would ever hear. And here it was. I clicked the first one. Her voice came through clear. April 14th, 2014. I had that dream again, the one with the burning library. I think it's about control. Click. Next. June 1st, 2015. Owen started walking. He keeps chasing the cat like it's some kind of game. My chest tightened at that one. Our son Owen was 9 now. We hadn't talked about Helen much lately. He brought her up less and less. Kids are like that. They forget to remember. And then it hits them in math class or at a stoplight. I clicked through more files, each one a tiny window back into a world I'd been afraid to revisit. And then, buried in a folder titled Last Notes, I saw it. Message Final MP3. The timestamp read, February 20th, 2023, the day before she passed. My fingers hovered. The audio started with static, then coughing, a long breath. Okay, she said, if you're hearing this, I didn't get the chance to say goodbye in person. I froze. This isn't for you, Patrick. My blood ran cold. Not for me. Please don't be angry. I just needed to say this somewhere. I tried to stop feeling it, but I can't lie anymore. I loved you. I loved you both. But the part of me that still belonged to him, I never got rid of it. My mouth went dry. I know what that sounds like. I know it's not fair, but it was real. It was always real. And I'm sorry. Click. The file ended. I sat back, slowly, like my spine forgot how to support me. There was no name, no clue who she meant. But it wasn't me. And now that voice, her voice, the one I used to wake up beside, the one that used to sing to our son during thunderstorms, that voice had reached from the past and cracked something open, something I didn't know was still fragile. I stared at the screen, then at the wall, then back at the screen. I copied the file to a new folder, renamed it Not Me. Then I sat in the dark and listened to it again. This story isn't finished yet. Continuing in the next part. I didn't sleep that night. I thought I might do the rational thing, get some rest, take a breath, wait until the morning to decide what to do with what I'd heard. But I couldn't shut my brain off. Every time I closed my eyes, her voice echoed in the dark. This isn't for you, Patrick. That single sentence. I kept hearing it over and over, like my subconscious had clipped that line and stuck it on a loop. By 5:30 a.m., I was sitting at the kitchen table again. Same chair, same cold mug, same blinking red light on the landline, even though there were no new messages. I hadn't cried, not yet, but I felt like a fault line had cracked through my chest and was just waiting for one more tremor. At 6:15, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Owen shuffled in with sleep still on his face, dragging his blanket behind him like he was 5 again. He rubbed his eyes, saw me sitting there in the dark, and froze. Dad, he said, voice scratchy. I forced a smile. Hey, buddy. You okay? Couldn't sleep? He stared at me for a second, then dropped the blanket and walked to the fridge. Is it another dream? No, I said, almost too fast. Just thinking. He pulled out the milk carton and poured some into a bowl of cereal that snapped and popped as it settled. Then he sat across from me, feet swinging a little under the chair. Owen had his mother's eyes, soft around the edges, always scanning, always catching more than you think. You looked sad yesterday, too, he said. I blinked. Yeah? After the mail came, I saw you put something in the drawer. You only do that when it's about Mom. Damn. He noticed everything. I found something, I said carefully. Something she left behind, a message. Like a letter? I hesitated. Kind of, but not to me. He frowned. Then who? I don't know yet. That part was true. After I dropped Owen off at school, I sat in my car for almost 10 minutes without turning the engine off. I knew where I had to go next, but every instinct in my body screamed to ignore it. Pretend it never happened. Delete the file. Burn the thumb drive. Take the pain and bury it deeper. But that wasn't who I was. At least, not anymore. So I drove to the only person who might know who he was. Amy lived 20 minutes away in a quiet neighborhood lined with dogwood trees and mismatched mailboxes. Helen's sister. 2 years younger, sharper than her, always had been. She met me at the door, in pajama pants and a robe, her hair up in a towel. Patrick? She blinked. What's going on? Is Owen okay? He's fine, I said quickly. Sorry to show up unannounced. She stepped aside. You look like you've been hit by a truck. I followed her in. The house smelled like toasted bread and lavender lotion. A kid's cartoon played softly from the living room. Coffee? She offered. I nodded. We sat in her small dining room while the sunlight crept over the table like it was eavesdropping. I pulled out the thumb drive and set it down. I found this in Helen's things. Recordings. Amy's face changed. Her eyes dropped to the drive, then flicked back up. Like diary stuff? Yeah. She swallowed. There's one file, I said. The last one. It's not for me. Amy didn't move. She says, she loved someone else. That part of her never stopped loving him, but she doesn't say who. Amy stared at me like I'd just spoken in a language she wasn't fluent in. Do you know who it could be? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, play it. I pulled out my phone. I'd transferred the file there too. Part of me needed it close, like proof that I hadn't imagined it. I tapped play. The room was dead quiet as Helen's voice filled the air. It was short, just under 30 seconds. But when it ended, the silence was loud. Amy didn't look at me. Her hand had curled into a fist against her mug. I knew she was hiding something, she said softly. I sat up straighter. You did? She was different those last few months. Quiet in a way that wasn't just sick. Like she was living inside her own head all the time. Did she ever mention anyone? Amy finally looked at me. She only had one almost before you. My stomach dropped. Name? Amy closed her eyes. Derek Monahan. I didn't know the name. He was her college boyfriend, she said. They broke up in their 20s. I think it hurt her more than she let on. He got married. She didn't hear from him for years. And then? She ran into him again, about 3 years ago. She mentioned it over coffee. Said it was nothing. Just one of those life full circle moments. My blood went cold. Did she meet with him? Amy hesitated. I think so, but she never talked about it again. I didn't push. I stared at the phone on the table, like it might answer for her. I typed the name into Google. Derek Monahan was a real estate agent based in Charleston. The first photo that came up was a headshot. Clean cut, early 40s, square jaw, business casual smile. I scrolled further. Wife, 2 kids, a golden retriever and a boat, because of course. But in one of the photos, a Christmas charity event, Helen was there. Far in the background, blurred, half turned away, but unmistakably her. Gray coat, hair up, the same silver earrings she wore on our 10th anniversary. The caption read, Monahan Family and Friends, December Gala 2021. My hand clenched around the phone. When I got back to the car, I didn't turn the engine on right away. I stared at the screen. Her voice was still in my ears. I loved you both. I remembered that winter. She'd gone to Charleston for work, a 2-day conference. She brought back fudge and photos of a downtown market. I didn't question it. Why would I? That night, I sat in my car outside Owen's school until the bell rang. When he climbed in, he asked, Why do you look mad? I'm not mad, I lied. I was drowning. Back home, I put Owen in front of the TV with a snack and slipped into the den. I pulled the old photo albums down, the ones Helen always meant to digitize, page after page. Family trips, birthday cakes, beach days, zoo visits, and then, tucked between 2 pages from 2022, I found a folded piece of paper, a receipt. Charleston Inn, room 3 hour, one night, December 19th, 2021. And on the back, in her handwriting, a phone number. No name. But I knew that night after Owen fell asleep, I poured a whiskey and stared at the number. I could call. I could hear his voice. I could ask the question that had been clawing at my chest since that message played. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out the thumb drive again. This time, I didn't go to the final file. I started at the beginning, 2014, and played every message, one by one, in order. Because maybe somewhere in that stretch of ordinary moments and whispered notes, I'd find a clue, a slip, a name, or maybe I'd just learned the version of her I never got to meet. I didn't find what I was looking for that night. I sat there, earbuds in, laptop open, shoulders hunched like I was bracing for something, and listened to 4 years of my wife's life on repeat. Her voice was so consistent, so calmly reflective, like she was composing letters to someone she wasn't sure would ever read them. Sometimes she talked about Owen, about me, the garden, her migraines, her fears about turning 40, the job she didn't love but stayed at because it made sense. Most of it was so normal, it hurt. You expect big secrets to come wrapped in red flags, but Helen's recordings were tidy, thoughtful, precise, like her. Then somewhere in the 2018 folder, I heard a different version of her, a more complicated one. September 6th, her voice said. Saw someone today, at the bakery on 3rd. Didn't think he'd recognize me, but he did. A long pause, some background traffic. We stood in line together, talked about almond croissants and how Charleston's gotten too expensive. His hair's gone gray, mine too, I guess. We didn't say much, just saw each other. Another pause. I thought I was over it, but apparently memory doesn't obey logic. Click. That was it. But I knew it had to be him. Derek Monahan. It was like watching a dam crack from the inside. Just small hairline fractures at first. Moments that didn't scream betrayal. Just nudged the edges of trust. Another file. November 2019. Patrick's been so tired lately. I wish I knew how to help. Maybe I'm the one who's tired. I keep thinking about that day at the pier. The bench near the fountains. That stupid joke he made about retirement plans and living off peanut butter. I laughed too hard. Her voice dipped. I wonder if he thinks about it too. That was the first time she didn't say who, and I realized something awful. She had split her life into compartments. One for me, one for Owen, one quiet and walled off for someone else. And I hadn't noticed. The next morning, I stared at the number written on the back of that Charleston Inn receipt. I had two choices. Let it sit or call it. I made coffee. I paced. I nearly talked myself out of it 3 times. Then I sat on the porch, stared at the street, and dialed. It rang 5 times, then voicemail. This is Derek. Leave a message. I hung up. I wasn't ready to leave my voice in his system. Instead, I drove. I didn't tell Owen where I was going, just arranged for Amy to pick him up from school. She didn't ask questions, just told me to text when I could. Charleston was 5.5 hours away. I made it in 4.5. I parked outside the real estate office listed on Derek's website. A sleek building with glass panels and fake succulents in the lobby. The receptionist was barely out of college. She smiled and asked if I had an appointment. I'm an old friend, I said. Is Derek in? She made a call, then nodded. He'll be right out. I wasn't prepared for how normal he looked. Khakis, polished shoes, blue button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow. Hey there, he said, extending a hand. I'm Derek. I didn't take it. I'm Patrick Carlyle, I said. His expression changed, just slightly. Ah, he said, Helen's husband. Was, but I didn't correct him. Can we talk? I asked. Somewhere private. He nodded, led me to a conference room with soundproof glass. The room was too clean, like a showroom. Derek closed the door and sat down. He didn't look nervous, just guarded. I reached into my jacket, pulled out the thumb drive. Recognize this? He blinked. Should I? It has her voice on it, I said. Helen, recordings. One of them was meant for you. He leaned back. Okay. She said she loved you, I said plainly. No flinching, no fake surprise, just a slow breath out. I figured she'd say something eventually, he said. That was the confirmation I didn't know I needed. I found a receipt, I said. Charleston Inn, December 21st, 2021. He nodded. I didn't know she was here. She didn't want you to, he said quietly. It wasn't some long affair. It happened once. I clenched my fists. Once is enough. I know, he said. I told her not to come. That stopped me. What? I told her it wasn't right, he said. She said she just needed to see what it felt like. One more time. We met, we talked, we crossed the line, but that was it. I wanted to punch him. Instead, I stared at the table. She said she loved you, so I repeated. I never stopped loving her, he said, but she chose you. I stood. This isn't closure, I said. I know, he said. She left us both half a goodbye. He didn't argue. As I left, he said, she talked about your son a lot. Said he was her anchor. You too. I paused at the door. She should have told me. She didn't want to break the life she built, he said. She was always scared of things cracking. Too late for that. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't call Amy. I didn't think about work or bills or groceries, just her voice, and the man who still carried it. When I got home, Owen was asleep on the couch. Amy had left a note. Chickens in the fridge. He did his homework. Call me if you need anything. I sat beside him and watched him breathe. And then, for the first time in months, I cried. Not angry tears, just tired ones. That night, I didn't go back to the thumb drive. I went to the attic, found the box of Helen's letters, the ones we used to leave for each other in the early days, under pillows, in lunch boxes, on the bathroom mirror. And I read them all, because I needed to remember the version of her that was mine, the version that danced in the kitchen, that sang off-key lullabies, that fell asleep with her glasses on during documentaries, that argued about thermostat settings and grocery brands, the one who lived with me every day, not just in final confessions and secret recordings. Owen came into the kitchen Saturday morning with messy hair and his pajama shirt on backward. He grabbed a banana, took one bite, and squinted at me over the counter. You look less sad today, he said. I nodded. I'm trying. He peeled the rest of the banana like it was the most serious task in the world. Did the message help? That stopped me. The one from Mom, he added. You said it wasn't for you. Did it still help? I didn't know how to answer that. Not without lying. Not without pulling him into something he didn't ask to carry. So I gave him the gentlest truth I had. It made me think about who she was, I said, and how sometimes we don't see all the pieces of someone, even when we love them. He nodded slowly, chewing. Then, I still miss her voice. That I could fix. That afternoon, I copied a handful of Helen's softer voicemails, the ones where she talked about Owen's first steps, or sang little songs, or whispered bedtime stories, onto a drive labeled Mom's Words. We sat together at my desk, just the two of us, while her voice filled the room like candlelight. He didn't say anything at first, just listened. Then, around the third recording, he said quietly, "She sounds happy." "She was," I said. "With you. With us." He leaned into me, and for a while, we didn't need to speak. But I wasn't done. There was still one piece missing. Something that nagged at me beneath all the heartbreak, confusion, and anger. Why didn't she tell me? Not about the voicemail, not even about Derek, but about the need. That ache she recorded. It wasn't just about another man. It was about something she was never able to name. A hunger, an absence. I had to understand. So I reached out to the only person I hadn't yet. Helen's old therapist, Dr. Mara Whitman, had sent a card after the funeral. One of those quiet, ink-heavy condolence notes that didn't say much but somehow still offered comfort. I found her number online. Called Monday morning. "This is Dr. Whitman," the voice answered. "Hi, my name's Patrick Carlisle. I was Helen's husband." A beat of silence. "I remember," she said gently. "How can I help?" "I found a recording, a voicemail. It wasn't meant for me." Another pause. "She never mentioned it," I added. "But she recorded a message about someone else, about feelings she still had." Dr. Whitman's voice stayed even. "And you're looking for what exactly?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Closure? Clarity? I need to know if she ever talked about feeling split, like she had different lives in her." A longer pause this time. "I can't disclose specifics," she said. "You understand that. Confidentiality." "I do. But I can say this. Helen struggled with guilt. Not just about the past, about the weight of being everything to everyone." I closed my eyes. "She loved you deeply," Dr. Whitman continued. "That was never in doubt. But sometimes love doesn't cancel out longing. It just coexists with it." "She said she loved us both," I said, "in the message." "She likely did," she replied. "People want things that contradict. Stability and thrill. Familiarity and mystery. Some people carry those tensions silently their whole lives." My throat felt tight. Was I enough? "That's the wrong question," she said softly. "The better one is, did she feel she could be all of herself with you?" I sat with that question for days. It haunted me more than the voicemail. Because if I was honest, no. I hadn't always made space for her softer truths, her uncertainties, her boredom, her dreams that didn't fit neatly inside our suburban life. I loved her fiercely. But maybe I didn't always see her clearly. I saw the mother, the wife, the woman who made shopping lists with categories, but not the one who had sat on a bench with an old flame and wondered what if. On Thursday, I drove Owen to his friend's house for a sleepover. The sky was bruised with sunset clouds, and I took the long way home. When I got in, the house felt too quiet. I went to the kitchen, made tea, didn't even check my phone. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a letter. I addressed it to Helen. I told her about Owen, about how he was doing better in math and had stopped picking at his fingernails. I told her I found the recordings. I told her I'd spoken to Derek. And I told her the thing I hadn't said out loud to anyone yet. I forgive you. Not because it didn't hurt, but because holding on to the betrayal was just another way of staying broken. I forgive you, I wrote, because I know what it's like to be human, to want more than one life, to love deeply, and still wonder what else could have been. Then I folded the letter, slid it into the fire pit out back, and lit a match. The flame caught fast, ash spiraled into the night air like a release. I stood out there for a long time. When I came back in, I passed the landline on the wall. Still beige, still coiled. The red light was blinking again. My breath caught. But this time, when I pressed play, it was a hang-up, just silence, and somehow that felt fitting. Not everything has a message. Some things just need space. I called Dr. Whitman again the next morning, not for answers, just to say thank you. Grief's strange, I told her. It makes you believe there's still more left to discover, like a puzzle you can finish if you just try hard enough. And maybe that's true, she said, but sometimes healing is just learning to live with the missing piece. I didn't say anything, but I wrote that down. A month passed. Owen's school had their spring open house. He drew a self-portrait with a tiny bubble caption that said, "My dad makes the best French toast." It was stuck to a bulletin board beside 10 others that looked almost identical, but I stared at his for a long time anyway. Afterward, we went for ice cream. He asked if we could visit the lake this summer, the one we hadn't been back to since the last trip with Helen. I said yes, even though the idea of packing for 3 when there were only 2 still stung. I was getting used to the sting. Back at home, Owen drifted off on the couch, one sock missing, mouth slightly open. I covered him with a blanket, the same one Helen used to wrap around her shoulders during cold movie nights, and stood there for a while, just listening to his quiet breathing. Then I went back into the den. The thumb drive still sat on my desk. I hadn't touched it in weeks. There were only a few files left I hadn't listened to. Most were untitled, their timestamps vague. I hovered my mouse over one that read voicemail draft 2.wave. I clicked it. Static. Then Helen's voice, soft and almost embarrassed. Trying this again. I keep starting and stopping. A breath. Maybe this is selfish. Maybe I should delete it, but I need to say it somewhere, even if it goes nowhere. Another pause. Sometimes I felt like I was more real in the version of me that didn't make sense. The one who missed things I shouldn't miss, who dreamed about places I never went, who wanted to sit in silence with someone who didn't need an explanation. My throat tightened. But Patrick, you were the life I chose. Every day. Even when I wondered. Even when I doubted. I chose you. Her voice caught. I need you to know, if you ever find this, that none of it was about lack. Not in you. Maybe in me. But never in you. Click. I sat back, eyes burning. I didn't cry. Not this time. It felt like standing at the edge of a lake right before dawn, the kind of quiet that wraps around you and tells you it's okay to stop searching. She had loved me, and she had been unsure. Both things could be true. That Sunday, I took Owen to the lake. We brought Helen's old quilt, packed peanut butter sandwiches she would have called depressingly utilitarian, and parked under the same tree as before. He skipped rocks. I watched the sun dip behind the trees. A few families laughed nearby, but mostly it was still. When he sat back down beside me, I said, "You remember how Mom used to say the water holds secrets?" He nodded. I reached into the cooler and pulled out a small sealed jar. Inside was the thumb drive. I'd printed a photo of Helen and wrapped it around the cylinder, sealed it with clear tape. "She left words behind, son," I said. "Pieces of herself. We don't need to carry them forever. Just remember, they existed." We walked to the dock together. Owen dropped it in. The jar sank slowly, the sunlight catching the photo once before it disappeared beneath the ripples. He didn't ask why I didn't want to keep it. He just said, "She'd like this." And I believed him. That night, I made French toast. We used the last of the cinnamon and burned the first batch, but Owen declared it perfect anyway. Before bed, He said, "Do you think Mom still watches us?" "I think," I said, "she'd want us to live like she's still listening." He nodded. "Can I listen to one of her bedtime stories again?" I pulled up the drive, the digital copy I'd saved separately, and played the story where she made up a talking bear who hated math. He was asleep before she got to the part where the bear learns to juggle. I turned off the recording, sat there in the dark. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like permission to keep going, to remember with tenderness, not wait, to live forward, not backward. The landline still hangs in the kitchen. I thought about taking it down, but I think I'll leave it. Not because I'm waiting for another message, but because some ghosts deserve a place to rest, even if it's just a blinking red light in the middle of the night. If this story moved you, subscribe for more real-life confessions and emotional journeys like this one.